Good morning, everyone. I'm in the process of getting this started. Give me a few more moments of it going. Want that. Hopefully this will work. Okay, I got onto YouTube chat. So good morning, Art. Sorry for the delay today. YouTube has made some changes here, and it has caused me to slow down, actually. It's not very nice of them. God knows what will happen when we have artificial intelligence. But I'm getting there, and I don't have a fellow traveler to work with me as yet, but I'm getting there too, I hope. Just okay. Let me just look at my messages and see if Jordan has sent me anything here. And yes. Okay, so he's coming in about 10 minutes from whenever he sent that, which was nearly 10 minutes ago. So we should be good. And while we wait, I can begin, I suppose. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be doing reading and commentary of the Red Book by C.G. Jung. And we're on page 410 of the Reader's Edition. So this is the Reader's Edition. It's the less expensive version of the Red Book. You can actually get all the images from the Red Book off the internet, so it's not necessary to buy the tabletop version unless you're well off enough to afford the whatever it is today, $160, something like that. Good morning, Jamie. Nice to see you. Been a while. I hope everything's going well at Purdue. Or maybe you're about to graduate, I guess. So anyway, nice to see you today. And I guess I will begin. So Jung is, let's just review here. Okay, I'm going to just read the last paragraph of last week's reading, just to sort of set the stage. So Jung says, what do you need? What do you need, O Philemon? You need men for the sake of small things, since everything greater and the greatest thing is in you. Christ spoiled men, since he taught them that they can be saved only by one, namely him, the Son of God. And ever since men have been demanding the greater things from others, especially their salvation, and if a sheep gets lost somewhere, it accuses the shepherd, O Philemon. You are a man, and you prove that men are not sheep, since you look after the greatest in yourself, and hence fructifying water flows into your garden through it from inexhaustible jugs. Now, this is a pretty complicated paragraph, but what it's basically saying is that when Christ gave everybody's sins, then nobody really paid any attention to their sins anymore. They just said, they just take the Lord's name in vain and think that some outside force is going to save them and redeem them. But that isn't the case at all. We each are responsible for our own lives. And, most of us really understand this, that we have to be responsible for our own lives. And let me just adjust my screen a minute. Okay. And so this means that we have to prepare for our own salvation and so on. And so this is what Jung has been talking about. Good morning, Jordan. Did you decide to grow your beard back?
Oh, we'll see. Short one. I still can't shave like every day.
Yeah.
So, because my skin's still 2 years new.
Right.
So we'll see. I think maybe a short one, but I'll see tomorrow. I think if I look at it and go, nah.
Yeah.
Or yes. So we'll see.
Well, I did notice right away.
Yeah, it comes back pretty quick. So I have to decide, am I just gonna buy a big bag of razors?
Right.
Because I went through the first day I shaved, I went through 3 triple blade razors.
I believe it.
Like the rebar,
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I use 5-blade razors these days for about the last decade. Yeah, they're very nice. The Gillette ones.
a friend of mine in college loaned me his Braun electric. He goes, "This would be easier. Try this." I did it after one shave. It's like just going on his face. It didn't work, and you just dulled.
Right. John T says, when I shave, it looks like my something. It's hidden by a. Somehow I gotta get rid of that. Just a minute. Let me put an answer onto YouTube so that I can. Okay. So John T says, when I shave, it looks like my face ate my chin. I apologize.
It's funny. So it's funny because this is the first time when this beard came off, it was just so right and so natural that I didn't feel that. But usually you feel like, have this serious overbite because your chin is so far back just from what you're accustomed to with a perspective.
Right. So, the reason I had a delay on the YouTube chat is that for some reason, in its infinite wisdom, YouTube has put a heart right in the middle of my answer, or the first answer, and I have to move everybody's chat up in order to be able to read it. Why that's it's nice that we have lots of hearts there as a result, but it just seems silly to me, and it's in my way. So I was just reading the last paragraph of what we were reading last week, and I just want to remind you what he said in part, which is, Christ spoiled men, since he taught them that they can be saved only by one, namely him, the Son of God, and ever since, men have been demanding the greater things from others, especially their salvation. And if a sheep gets lost somewhere, it accuses the shepherd. So, yeah, Christ spoiled men. Christ gave men redemption by saying, my bad, and that's not the way it works. We have
no,
to.
in fact,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to be responsible for our own lives. Okay. There's no woo God in the sky that's going to save you. The Christ that might save you is in your heart, but you have to be responsible to find that and to understand what it means. And that's one of the special features of Carl Jung, that he finally, after 2,000 years, after Christ has been making everybody crazy for 2,000 years, thinking they can be saved by
Oh, your video froze. Your video froze right when okay. You said to be saved by.
Well, you can't expect to be saved by some woo out there. You have to find the redemption Christ in your own heart. And
I remember I wrote an article years ago called "Strip Yourself of Salvation."
Yeah,
you just no need for it.
Right. And Richard says that's the Protestant view. We think God saves us because of our warm and fuzzy personality. Oh yeah. Yeah. Our warm and fuzzy personality created the United States, where everybody is descended from people who came from somewhere else, including Native Americans. Okay, so those who insist that they should be called Native Americans just haven't looked far enough back.
Which section? I'm my PDF opened in a strange spot. I'm on H1 152. I thought
we're on 150 right now. Okay, the next one is 150. And so that's where I'm going from anyway. All right, so we're on page 410. And maybe I read this last week, but let's read it again in any case. Are you lonely, O Philemon? I see no entourage and no companions around you. Bacchus is only your other half. You live with flowers, trees, and birds, but not with men. Should you not live with men? Are you still a man? Do you want nothing from men? Do you not see how they stand together and concoct rumors and childish fairy tales about you? Do you not want to go to them and say that you are a man and immortal as they are, and that you want to love them? Oh, Philemon, you laugh. I understand you. Just now I ran into your garden and wanted to tear out of you what I had to understand from within myself. Okay, let me read that again. Just now I ran into your garden and wanted to tear out of you what I had to understand from within myself. Okay, I think I did read this last week, but let's go ahead and do some comment on it again, Jordan. It's an important paragraph.
Yeah, and tear out of you what I had to understand from within myself. That's really expressing the not knowing and the groping, reaching outside of oneself until one realizes all the wisdom of the ages lives within. And that's kind of why there's so many similar concepts across the centuries, where, I think T.S. Eliot said, there's nothing new. You just need to make everything original. And that way it's, that understand from within yourself or within myself to bring that to bear in work, communications, connections with others.
Right. Let's see. Oh, Jamie graduated back in May in social work at a mental health place in town. Great. Okay. And Jonty says, I know the confessional is often used for a holy reset when people act up. Maybe that's why pencils have erasers. Well, that's what my entire school is about. I used to try and whitewash my nonsense until I met myself coming back. Beware Abraxas. Eek, yes, very definitely. Oh, Philemon, I understand immediately. I made you into a savior who lets himself be consumed and bound with gifts. That's what men are like, you think. They are all still Christians, but they want even more. They want you as you are. Otherwise, you would not be Philemon to them, and they would be inconsolable if they could find no bearer for their legends. Hence, they would also laugh if you approached them and said you were as mortal as they are and want to love them. If you did that, you would not be Philemon. They want you, Philemon, but not another mortal who suffers from the same ills as they do. Okay, what does he mean by mortal here?
The Philemon is then the transcendent function here, I think, and not a mortal concoction. Could find no bearer for their legends. I mean,
yeah, I mean, human beings need a story, right?
Well, yeah,
and here he says, you were as mortal as they are and want to love them. Okay, well, you are as mortal as they are because you are them. You are us.
That reminds me of a graduate philosophy class on the image and reality of man and the machine in modern literature that I took early on in college. And there was a cartoon, it was the whole, Turing's machine model and what is sentience and how will we know when something we make is actually sentient. But then there's the copy room and these two scientists in lab coats, poring over these notes on a table. And one says, we're trying to transfix ourselves with convincing ourselves that we'll know, but how will we know when a machine is conscious? And in the next frame, the copier leans back on the back two casters and says, that reminds me of a story. So
right. Well, it is my view that machines will not become sentient. And I mean, I give you an example of an experience I had today or this week, where I have a Apple speaker hooked up to my television set, and we have to use that when we watch things on Apple Plus, whatever, right? And so when we try to turn it off and go back to our regular programming, the speaker sometimes doesn't stop. And then you have to say, Siri, stop. Okay. And then Siri responds, there's nothing to stop here. Because it is stopped, right? So in that split second after you say the word stop, it responds, there's nothing to stop.
And some of those responses are so funny. I remember sitting watching, someone was, playing around with Siri. I just went, Siri, tell me about your appearance. What do you look like? And she comes back, I really appreciate your concern and your care, but this is not about me. What's your question?
Okay. Well, Deb's response was that when artificial intelligence is capable of launching nuclear missiles, and the human beings shout, "Siri, stop!" when Siri has started to launch nuclear weapons, Siri will just respond, "There's nothing to stop you."
Well, there's a tech joke too. You get one picture of, you know, it wasn't the Hubble, the new telescope. The name's escaping me right now. But this wonderfully clear picture of millions of light years away, and then right next to it, but 8 feet away from the security camera, and this is blurry image of this guy just standing there.
Yeah,
like right in front of it. So it's like, great, we can direct all this stuff outside, but what about clarity right here and now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to show you an image which sort of backs up my opinion here. This is a doodle that I've been working on, and I found that this is a very good meditation technique, but it's a very good meditation technique for men. And so what happens here is you draw your doodle and then you decide how to color it in. This one I haven't gotten very far with yet, but as you can see, for example, this dark blue, you can see it's a pipeline that goes back to this area, and here it's going underneath some red and some purple and some lighter blue, for example. And so I think it's sort of a circuit board. And so as a man, I find myself trying to make it look right, but the doodle was done totally randomly, except it's based on the mark of my mark of the self, which decides to make all these pipelines, which I think look like circuit boards. But the point is that there's nothing random, and artificial intelligence is never going to get beyond the putting something together mode, right? It's always going to be trying to make something of something. And
yeah, it's additive and not integrative.
Right. And so even though I consider that a meditation technique that I'm doing, and the reason I do is because I can forget everything else when I do it, right? So it works for me like a mantra would work. But the issue is that it's still, as I'm doing it, it's still me trying to make some logos out of it. Okay. And so what it allows me to do is put my conscious brain aside, my left brain aside, and listen to myself most of the time. But even when you're saying mantras or whatever, you're not totally concentrated on that. You're maybe 75% concentrated on that.
And it feels like going from the generative to the formative, but keeping the generative as the marrow of the matter, or the heart of the matter in what you have made, the logos piece.
Yeah. So going on now, I understand you, O Philemon. You are a true lover, since you love your soul for the sake of men, because they need a king who lives from himself and owes no one gratitude for his life. They want to have you thus. You fulfill the wish of the people and you vanish. You are a vessel of fables. You would besmirch yourself if you went to men as a man, since they would all laugh and call you a liar and a swindler. since Philemon is not a man. Okay, so Philemon is Jung's metaphor for the self, or for, the Almighty, God.
There's a totality concept there.
Right. And so even in the Red Book, where he does refer to he refers to the Bhagavad Gita in English in the Red Book, as I've pointed out before, but it basically says, what he quoted there is basically, when things get really bad, I emerge. Right. And why does quote quote I emerge? The answer is because things have gotten totally bad, and they have to swing back toward the middle, and we're certainly experiencing that in the United States in our current affairs, where things are swinging back toward the middle.
I think that also brings to bear that the prepared mind can easily go off script, and at those times of crisis, trouble, etc., you go off script, which means you're acting naturally. And I think the more you can just be capital R real, right there with it, you can deal with things that actually are important, that are trouble, instead of fabricating things that are fictions that really have nothing but presumption and projection in them.
Yeah. John,
don't Dr. Phil the situation. Just listen, and what is there has been said, and there's no what does that mean kind of stuff.
Yeah. So John has a funny comment here. God whispers to me, tell them I told you to do it. Then he runs off laughing. Yeah, right.
Well, it's interesting, even in that, I think that's interesting with Jante's comment, because even in that, there's kind of I find an errant lack of responsibility in the God is outside. Oh, well, I did this, but I was told by someone else to do it, so it's not really my responsibility. But it's fine, but there's the stimulus, but then your responsibility is your response. You don't have to do that, and getting pranked by the divine, I guess that would be what he's talking about.
Right. So we're all responsible for our own lives. So I saw, O Philemon, that crease in your face. You were young once and wanted to be a man among men, but the Christian animals did not love you. Did not love your pagan humanity, since they felt in you what they needed. They always sought the branded one, and when they caught him somewhere in freedom, they locked him in a golden cage and took from him the force of his masculinity, so that he was paralyzed and sat in silence. Then they praise him and devise fables about him. I know they call this veneration, and if they do not find the true one, they at least have a pope whose occupation it is to represent the divine comedy. But the true one always disowns himself, since he knows nothing higher than to be a man. I'm going to go on.
That's a big statement about staying present with who and what you are.
Right. So are you laughing, O Philemon? I understand you. It irked you to be a man like others, and because you truly loved being human, you voluntarily locked it away so that you could be for men at least what they wanted to have from you. Therefore I see you, O Philemon, not with men, but wholly with flowers, the trees and the birds, and all waters flowing and still, that do not besmirch your humanity. For you are not Philemon to the flowers, trees, and birds, but a man. Yet what solitude, what inhumanity. Okay, you want to comment on that? And the Pope, the snide comment about the Pope.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the snide comment about the Pope, they call it veneration. Well, veneration is also responding to an outside force, and veneration to me becomes that intensity of, you put someone on a pedestal, it makes it that much easier for them to kick your teeth right down your throat, and then that's your fault. But at least they have a Pope, so there's this pretty dressed up, costumed, ornate, not street clothes person, not even business clothes. This is, it goes way out there. So the veneration is almost the God in the man, or God in the person. And if they do not find the true one, which would be themselves, then they have a Pope. They still have this external hope, or looking to, it still can be good. But, life is trouble until you realize it's trouble. And then you navigate it to find the treasures, and you make the treasures and discover them. So I think here, and because you truly loved being human, you voluntarily locked it away. And well, right there, it's, don't hide from yourself just because you know it, and just because it's true and real. Well, then it is. Don't go, okay, well, I got it, I'm going to keep looking. Stop. You already have it. Don't lock it away. So I think the unlocking is an implication here, and not locking it into a venerated Pope or similar figure.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of that section, and we will read on. Why are you laughing, O Philemon? I cannot fathom you. But do I not see the blue air of your garden? What happy shades surround you? Does the sun hatch blue midday specters around you? Are you laughing, O Philemon? Alas, I understand you, your humanity. I understand you. Humanity has completely faded for you, but its shadow has arisen for you. How much greater and happier the shadow of humanity is than it is itself. The blue midday shadows of the dead. Alas, there is your humanity. O Philemon, you are a teacher and a friend of the dead. They stand sighing in the shade of your house. They live under the branches of your trees. They drink the dew of your tears. They warm themselves at the goodness of your heart. They hunger after the words of your wisdom, which sounds full to them, full of the sounds of life. I saw you, O Philemon, at the noonday hour, when the sun stood highest. You stood speaking with a blue shade. Blood stuck to its forehead, and solemn torment darkened it. I can guess, O Philemon, who your midday guest was. How blind I was, fool that I am. That is you, O Philemon, but who am I? I go my way, shaking my head, and people's looks follow me, and I remain silent, oh despairing silence. Now, there is a footnote here, footnote number 280. Jung's fantasy of June 1st, 1916, where Philemon's guest was Christ. Okay, and it's also covered in page 551 of this book, so we'll get to that. Any comments, Jordan?
I think there's a really important piece buried in the visual of at the noonday. I saw you, O Philemon, at the noonday hour when the sun stood highest. You stood speaking with a blue shade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the noonday hour when the sun stood highest, and I was talking to someone last week, and I said, well, high noon, there are no shadows because your shadow is protected under your feet. So then you're in the light, and then your shadow is your support underneath. So I feel like this I saw you at the noonday hour. That's the whole tree of life piece where the light and the consciousness above directly comes down to at the soles of your feet. You connect, mirror back to the depths of the shadow and the unconscious. So I think there's a piece hidden in the just the visual of that when the sun stood highest, meaning right above you.
Okay, and we're getting to the point in the Red Book where Jung mentions the Bhagavad Gita, which I have on my screen. I'll share it with you when we get to that point. But this is where it comes in. O master of the garden, I see your dark tree from afar in the shimmering sun. My street leads to the valleys where men live. I am a wandering beggar, and I remain silent. Killing off would-be prophets is a game for the people. If they want murder, then may they kill their false prophets. If the mouth of the gods remains silent, then each one listen to his own speech. He who loves the people remains silent. If only false teachers teach, the people will kill the false teachers and will fall into the truth even on the way of their own sins, Only after the darkest night will it be day. So cover the lights and remain silent so that the night will become dark and noiseless. The sun rises without our help. Only he who knows the darkest error knows what light is. And then the next section begins with this in italics. O master of the garden, your magical grove shown to me from afar. I venerate your deceptive mantle. You, Father of all, you, Father of all will-o'-the-wisps. Okay, and then there's a footnote. And I'll also bring this up now, this image, because this is where we are in the calligraphic volume, the folio volume. And I don't know if you can see the Bhagavad Gita reference. Let me bring that over here. Well, you can't read it, unfortunately, so I'm going to...
Still uploading. That's...
Okay.
I think here there's a really important piece. The mouth of the gods remains silent. Then each can listen to their own speech. And that then tells me, beware the false prophet of who you think you are. You are who you live yourself into being. So just be and real. And if only false teachers teach, the people will kill the false teachers. Well, they're also trying to project out, and as if doing that will help them somehow. It may, cause less chatter, less interference patterns, but the reality is not looking at yourself in any other way than live it instead of the Dr. Phil in your insides. Right. Just what do you feel? What do you do? What's real? And then work with that instead of, so you listen to your own speech, and it becomes vastly important to take care with your words.
Yeah. And so what's significant here, among other things, first of all, this is Jung's image of Philemon. And here on the left side is the passage from the Bhagavad Gita that I mentioned, which is when things become really bad, then I present myself again. And so here's Philemon presenting himself to Jung in the midst of World War I. Now, what's significant here is, here's actually Jung down here, this little tiny guy. It's very hard to see on my photograph here because it's not in good focus, I guess, because I don't know, YouTube changes it and so on. But under this little gold thing there's a man facing Philemon and praying with his arms outstretched in an attitude of prayer. Over on the right side, there's a big snake, and it's all coiled up doing its business. And there's two trees. One is, by implication, is a bad tree, and one is a good tree. Okay.
Well, maybe one's a natural tree and one's a too rational tree.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Okay, and so there's a footnote after this image. It says, the text in the image reads, Father of the prophet, beloved Philemon. Jung subsequently painted another version of this painting as a mural in one of the bedrooms in his tower at Bollingen, which is what's behind me. He added an inscription in Latin from the Rosarium Philosophorum, in which Hermes describes the stone as saying, defend me and I will defend thee. Give me my right that I may help thee, for Sol is mine, and the beams thereof are my inward parts. But Luna is proper to me, and my light excelleth all light, and my goods are higher than all goods. I give many riches and delights to men desiring them, and when I seek after anything, they acknowledge it. I make them understand, and I cause them to possess divine strength. I engender light, but my nature is darkness. Unless my metal should be, amen. I'll do this better without my specs, I think. Unless my metal shall be dry, all bodies have need of me, because I moisten them. I blot out their rustiness and extract their substance. Therefore, I and my sunbeam joined together, there can be nothing made better nor more honorable in the whole world. Jung cited some of these lines in Psychology and Alchemy, 1944, Collected Works 12, paragraphs 99, 140, 155. The Rosarium, first published in 1550, was one of the most important texts of European alchemy, and concerns the means of producing the philosopher's stone. It contained a series of woodcuts of symbolic figures, which was Jung's exemplar in Psychology of the Transference, explained through an alchemical series of pictures for doctors and practical psychologists. Okay, and that's from Collected Works 16. All right, you want to read on, Jordan?
Sure. I continue on my way, accompanied by a finely polished piece of steel, hardened in 10 fires, stowed safely in my robe. Secretly, I wear chainmail under my coat. Overnight, I became fond of serpents, and I solved their riddle. I sit down next to them on the hot stones lying by the wayside. I know how to catch them cunningly and cruelly, those cold devils that prick the heel of the unsuspecting. I became their friend and played a softly toned flute, but I decorate my cave with their dazzling skins. As I walked on my way, I came to a red rock on which a great iridescent serpent lay. Since I had now learned magic from Philemon, I took out my flute again and played a sweet magical song to make her believe that she was my soul. When she was sufficiently enchanted, I spoke to her, my sister, my soul, what do you say? But she spoke, flattered and therefore tolerantly. I let grass grow over everything that you do. That sounds comforting and seems not to say much. S, being serpent, her soul, would you like me to say much? I can also be banal. as you know, and let myself be satisfied that way. That seems hard to me. I believe that you stand in a close connection with everything beyond, with what is greatest and most uncommon. Therefore, I thought that banality would be foreign to you. S. Banality is my element. I. That would be less astonishing if I said it about myself. S. The more uncommon you are, the more common I can be. A true respite for me. And I think you can sense that I don't need to torment myself today. I can feel it. And I'm worried that your tree will ultimately bear me no more fruit. Soul, worried already? Don't be stupid and let me rest. I notice that you like being banal, but I do not take you to heart, my dear friend, since I know you much better than before. Soul, you're getting to be familiar. I'm afraid that you are beginning to lose respect. Are you upset? I believe that would be uncalled for. I'm sufficiently well informed about the proximity of pathos and banality. Soul, so have you noticed that the becoming of the soul follows a serpentine path? Have you seen how soon day becomes night and night day? How water and dry land change places? And that everything spasmodic is merely destructive. I believe that I saw all of this. I want to lie in the sun on this warm stone for a while. Perhaps the sun will incubate me. But the serpent crept up to me quietly and wound herself smoothly around my feet. Everything fell, and night came.
Evening fell,
and night came. I spoke to the serpent and said, I don't know what to say. All pots are on the boil. Soul, a meal is being prepared. A last supper, I suppose. Soul, a union with all humanity. A horrifying sweet thought, to be both guest and dish at this meal. Soul, that was also Christ's highest pleasure. How holy, how sinful, how everything hot and cold flows into one another. Madness and reason want to be married. The lamb and the wolf graze peacefully side by side. It is all yes and no. The opposites embrace each other, see eye to eye, and intermingle. They recognize their oneness in agonizing pleasure. My heart is filled with the wild battle. The waves of dark and bright rivers rush together, one crashing over the other. I have never experienced this before. Soul, that is new, my dear one, at least for you. I suppose you are mocking me, but tears and laughter are one. I no longer feel like either, and I am rigid with tension. Loving reaches up to heaven, and resisting reaches just as high. They are intertwined and will not let go of each other, since the excessive tension seems to indicate the ultimate and highest possibility of feeling.
Okay, let's stop there for a moment because we have a bunch of footnotes to catch up on here. So going back, on page 412, I took my flute again and played a sweet magical song to make her believe that she was my soul. When she was sufficiently enchanted. Okay, and then here's the footnote. In the psychological aspects of the chore, which Jung wrote in 1951, Jung anonymously described this image as, okay, and it's this image, I think, as she, XI, then she, the anima, appears in a church, taking the place of the altar, still over life-size, but with veiled face. He commented, dream she restores the anima to the Christian church, not as an icon, but as an altar itself, as the altar itself. The altar is the place of sacrifice, and also the receptacle of consecrated relics. And that's from Collected Works 9, 1, paragraphs 369 and 380. On the left side, on the left-hand side, there is the Arabic word for daughters. On the border of the image is the following inscription: De sapientiae in mysterio quae abscondita est quam predestinavit ante secula in gloriam nostrum quam nemo principium huius seculi cognovit. Spirits enim omnia scrutatur etiam profunda Dei. This is a citation from 1 Corinthians 2, 7 through 10. Jung has omitted Deus before ante secula. The portions cited are marked here in italics. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of the world knew. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by the Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God. Oh, on either side of the arch is the following inscription: Spiritus et sponsa deconveni et qui audit dicat veni et qui sitit veniat qui vult accipitium aquam vita gratis. The text is from Revelation 22:17. The Spirit of the bride say, Come, and let him that heareth say, Come, and let him that is athirst come, and whosoever will, let him take the water of life freely. Above the arch is the following inscription: Ave Virgo Virginum, Hail Virgin of Virgins. This is the title of a medieval hymn, and the date of this passage is January 29th, 1914. So again, we're still only 6 weeks after the visioning had begun. And then on page 414, there's a statement: I believe that you stand in a close connection with everything beyond. And the footnote reads, from this point in the calligraphic volume, Jung's coloring of red and blue initials becomes less consistent. Some have been added here for consistency. And then going on, but the serpent crept up to me quietly and wound herself smoothly around my feet. This is a line in the Black Book, in Black Book 4, where the voice is not identified as the serpent. And then this next bit was written on January 31st, 1914. Then a footnote for this: a horrifying sweet thought, to be both guest and dish at this meal. And in the footnote, it reads, in Mysterium Conjunctionis, Jung noted, if the projected conflict is to be healed, it must return into the soul of the individual, where it has its beginning in an unconscious matter. He who wants to be the master of this descent must celebrate a Last Supper with himself and eat his own flesh and drink his own blood, which means that he must recognize and accept the other in himself. And that's from Collected Work 14, Mysterium Conjunctionis, paragraph 512. Going on. Madness and reason want to be married. The lamb and the wolf graze peacefully side by side. And the footnote reads, Isaiah 11:6. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall be lie down with the kid and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. Okay, and then one more. I suppose you are mocking me, but tears and laughter are one. Jung's marginal note in the calligraphic volume, which is, I guess it's the 16th of August, 1925, is when he put this note. This appears to refer to when this passage was transcribed into the calligraphic volume. In the autumn of 1925, Jung went to Africa together with Peter Baines and George Beckwith. They left England on October 15th and arrived back in Zurich on March 14th, 1926. Okay. Let's see. All right, now we can continue on.
And I think right as you started that, the Sapientiae piece, and it's also known as Sophia, except instead of being just wisdom, it indicates wisdom personified. So wisdom lived, not I'm intelligent and I know all this stuff. It's the living wisdom of how that is driving your life. So I think there's a difference with the Sapientiae, especially, and Sophia is similar, but in several religions, it implies the personification of the wisdom rather than the wisdom itself.
Right. Okay. So there's the next paragraph also has a footnote. So why don't you read the paragraph and I'll read the footnote.
Starting with
you express
yourself emotionally. Yeah, you express yourself emotionally and philosophically. You know that one can say all this much more simply. For example, one can say that you have fallen in love all the way from the worm up to Tristan and Isolde.
Okay, the footnote reads, the 12th century tale of the adulterous romance between the Cornish knight Tristan and the Irish princess Isolde has been retold in many versions up to Wagner's opera, which Jung referred to as an example of the visionary mode of artistic creation. Psychology and Poetry, 1930, Collected Works 15, which is the volume on creativity, paragraph 142. Now, it's interesting. I have a student right now whose name is Tristan. It's very interesting that people are still using that name.
Right.
I'm not sure that they know what they mean by that when they do it. Okay, you can carry on.
Okay. Yes, I know, but nonetheless, soul, religion is still tormenting you, it seems. How many shields do you still need? Much better to say it straight out. You're not tripping me up. Soul, well, what is it with morality? Have morality and immorality also become one today? You're mocking me. my sister and chthonic devil. But I must say that those two that rose up to heaven entwined are also good and evil. I'm not joking, but I groan, because joy and pain sound shrill together. Soul, where then is your understanding? You've gone utterly stupid. After all, you could resolve everything by thinking. My understanding? My thinking? I no longer have any understanding. It has grown impervious to me. Soul, you deny everything that you believed. You've completely forgotten who you are. You even deny Faust, who walked calmly past all the specters. I am no longer up to this. My spirit too is a specter. Soul, I see you follow my teaching. Unfortunately, that's the case, and it has benefited me with painful joy. Soul, you turn your pain into pleasure. You are twisted, blinded. Just suffer, you fool. This misfortune ought to make me happy. Continuing, the serpent now became angry and tried to bite my heart, but my secret armor broke her poisonous fang. She drew back astonished and hissing. You actually behave as if you were unfathomable. That's because I have studied the art of stepping from the left foot onto the right and vice versa, which others have done unthinkingly from time immemorial. The serpent raised herself again, as if accidentally, holding her tail in front of her mouth, so that I should not see the broken fang. Proudly and calmly she said, so you have finally noticed this. But I spoke to her smilingly. The sinuous line of life could not escape me in the long run.
Okay. Do you want to comment at all on that?
Well, I find it interesting how petty he's being, and that he manipulated it's like amateur seduction. There was nothing behind it that was anything other than coercion, and instead of the persuasion of, oh, that's natural and beautiful. So the trickster piece here of him trying to stay in control is interesting. And then he breaks his own soul. He breaks his own penetrative inner penetration fang, that poison.
We lost you, Jordan, on, you said the trickster piece, and then we lost you.
Yeah, there's this trickster piece where he's manipulating his soul, and then he breaks the fang that's going to poison him with pure life, the connection that the soul is talking about here. And in a sense, it seems like he's trying to stay in control, and basically it's like talking about battle instead of going on the battlefield. I mean, he seems to be thinking this soul thing through until it comes to the soul's embarrassed. She puts her tail up to cover the fang. Mm-hmm. He makes his soul very human. So I feel like though he met his soul, he had to bring her down to him instead of rising up and expanding to a larger self of himself.
Yeah. And there are a couple of footnotes that are in the beginning of the next section. We're on to another section on page 417. But I think it's worth, before we read it, reading the footnotes. So Jung commented on the comparison of Christ with the serpent in Transformation of Symbols of the Libido, 1912, Collected Works, B 585, and in Ion, 1950, Collected Works 92, 291. And so Jung is commenting on this comparison of Christ to the serpent over many years from 1912 on to 1952 and or 1950, and so 38 years have transpired. So reading on.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead before I read it.
I was going to say, do you want me to read?
No, I'm going to read the next section. Okay, you had the fun of reading the conversation between the serpent, the soul serpent, and Jung. But before we do that, let's just look at
actually, what's interesting, and instead of also the manipulation piece, in fact, the sapientiae personifying the wisdom piece comes into where he's humanizing the soul here through the serpent also.
Right. Okay. Now, meanwhile, lots has been happening on the chat. So let me see how much we can get back. Okay, so Richard, I'm going to go back quite a ways to something Richard said. The philosopher's stone is a vain man's intellect. He keeps trying to make sense of by his own knowledge, but it keeps him in the Ouroboros of destroying itself over and over. Interesting point, Richard. I agree with you. And Cherie says solipsism. The theory that nothing is the self is the only object of verifiable knowledge, or nothing but the self exists. I think you mean exists, not exists. Sherry asks, is the intellect book knowledge? Well, I wouldn't say that, Sherry, because one can experience and have in the intellect an experience of something, but not be able to explain it in words. In other words, we had our confluence about a month ago now, and it actually began a month ago today. And if I try to describe, and in my intellect, I know what happened there and what its meaning is. But if I try to describe it and start talking about it and what it meant to the people who attended, I denigrate it. I belittle it because one can never describe something that has to be experienced, right? And so even Jordan, who's been following me for quite a while now and who has tried to go to Confluence twice now, cannot appreciate what happened in those rooms among those people at that time. It's inexpressible. And if I try to express it, even describing it this much, I denigrate it. Okay. And so it's not book learning. I mean, I think within your intellect, you can have, you can know this, okay? But it's not book knowledge. It's right brain knowledge. It's experiential knowledge. And then Richard says, sometimes I think Paul wasn't experiencing Jesus, but just the Dionysian mysteries, cheap thrills from demons. Yeah, maybe. Is there anything to be said about the consistency of the initials? I don't know what you're referring to, Jamie. I'm sorry. And then Masonic Traveler says, so you're saying that Richard, that the Philosopher's Stone is a trap and not an actual stone that grants immortality. I would say that that's absolutely true. I mean, the Philosopher's Stone was the objective of the alchemists, and they were trying to get to the Philosopher's Stone, but the Philosopher's Stone is within us. It's not a rock.
Well, and actually, yes. And also, I've just recently, about a month ago, found out there's some attributions to an actual stone, a mineral called nummite, Nuummite, which is the oldest mineral on the planet, only found in Greenland and actually spotty parts of Maryland, from Pangea snap and drift. But it's interesting that, yes, it's within us. That's the whole metaphor. But in actuality, I think they talismanically would use nummite as the symbol, physical symbol.
Okay, I mean, I don't mean to say that some physical rock can be a symbol of the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, and it may indeed be this nummite. I haven't researched this personally, and so I don't confirm or deny what Jordan just said. But what I am saying is that the Philosopher's Stone is within you, and once you find it and you know, you will never go back.
And I think to qualify the nummite too, it's that, yes, the totality of you that you know, that I think they chose the nummite because it almost has the whole universe in it. So it's that again, sapientiae, the personification of wisdom, where then in the rock was a nature symbol,
right.
natural.
And so Masonic Traveler says, so you were saying, Richard, that the Philosopher's Stone is a trap and not an actual stone that grants our immortality. Of course, humanity has been looking for the fountain of youth or immortality since time immemorial. But and immortality does exist. I mean, each of us is a symbol of the hopes and fears of all of our ancestors going back to single-celled organisms. And so their hopes and fears are in that sense immortal, okay, because we are the physical symbol of that, representation of that. And you know, it's just a very big thought to think that every one of our ancestors, all human beings, the ancestors of all human beings, every one of them has done two things without fail. They survived until they reproduced. They survived until they reproduced. And why did they do that? It may have been unconscious, but their hopes and fears were bound up in that act and in those children. And so we represent their hopes and fears. And it's not only our biological parents. Okay, so for example, My wife has never had physical children. My second wife, Debbie, who I've been with since 1986. She's never had physical children, but her hopes and fears are conveyed through the collective unconscious every day of the week, right? Not biologically, but through the mystery, a mystery. And her hopes and fears are conveyed by me to all of you. Just as Jordan's father's hopes and fears are conveyed here and symbolized by Jordan. And each one of us has that in our lives. So so that's the philosopher's stone. You have to understand, you know, what it is that we're immortal about. Okay. And I at this point, I feel that I could die and die happy, because I know that I have left my spirit behind. I've put all of my spirit into the field of dreams, everything that I could. And I keep having more, fortunately for me, that I can put into the field of dreams. But at any given moment, okay, and one of the things that the Buddhists say is you have to be prepared to die anytime, because we never know when we're going to die for whatever reason. We never know when a nuclear weapon is going to drop on our head without warning. And I've been in existential places like Vietnam, where for 9 months I didn't know if a rocket was going to land on my head. And so we have to do our best to leave our spirit on the field of dreams. Now, I happen to have been a person that has left evidence of that, physical evidence of it, in the form of things like the water bearer. Did you get your water bearer yet, Jordan?
I think it arrived yesterday. I got a UPS box, and when I went to get information from UPS, it said 17.8 pounds. And I haven't ordered anything from Amazon that heavy. So that sounds like bronze and stone. So
yeah, I think so.
hopefully I can get out there tomorrow to pick it up, and looking forward to opening that box.
Right. Okay. So, but that's a physical representation of my spirit and Tim Holmes's spirit and Bob Manis's spirit, because the three of us cooked that thing up. I mean, we all made our own contributions to it. And Tim and I both have our spirit in the gift to you of that item, right?
And I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
And that physical item is a representation of, sure, the water bearer, the Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, but it's also it's a symbol of your spirit, my spirit, and Tim's spirit, in terms of you receiving it this year. Okay. And so and it's going to exist for 5,000 years, no matter what.
Right.
And so you know, I mean, probably longer. I think bronze may even last longer than 5,000 years, but we sort of only have record for 5,000 years.
Well, and I go ahead.
Yeah, but even if it somehow was destroyed, even if you were sitting on top of the caldera of a super volcano and it melted, right, in a catastrophic eruption, and it melted down. Nonetheless, though that spirit of the three of us cannot be destroyed. It's the philosopher's stone, and it ripples out through the world. By next week, 300 to 500 people will know about it across the world.
Okay. And the magma of the caldera takes it back to the generative to then come out and form new things in the lava later. I'd like to also add to the, for example, my dad, when he died in 2021, he went to live in my heart, and so that's where that he is. But I think also too, being careful to know to not look as a parent as that divinity outside that's now inside, so that, to me, be careful of tradition being peer pressure from dead people, because his hopes and fears are his and were his, and they don't necessarily need to be mine. So I'm not carrying out his job. It's a matter of I can be informed by counsel, wise counsel, or otherwise, but the discernment to live your own life instead of being bullied from inside by some peer pressure from dead people.
So Masonic Traveler says, what made you come to such a conclusion? That Richard had the conclusion that not an actual stone that grants immortality. And what made you come to such a conclusion? Then what's the prima materia? Okay. So Richard says alchemy is all in the Bible, but is it that we look at it as literal, or is it truly meant for some but not for others? And I think that is absolutely true. And the prima materia, is everything that came out of the Big Bang. That's the prima materia. There's not a physical something here on the planet Earth that is the prima materia. I mean, Jung referred to the idea, the primary material. Jung referred to the Red Book time as his prima materia for a lifetime's work. But a human lifetime's work, in his case, 60 to 70 years, is just a drop in the bucket. There are 8 billion of us, and so that prima materia isn't the prima materia for everyone's life. Sherry says that the disciples traveled in twos where Paul traveled to. I guess so. I don't know that part of the story. I know that Doubting Thomas, ended up in what today is Chennai, what used to be called Madras in India. And so there's reputedly relics of Thomas, but that stuff gets a little ghoulish for my taste.
Well, it's interesting. They traveled in twos, and then they're 12. That's six pairs of unity. Right. The two is unity, and 6 is the ultimate number of reciprocality and epic exchange, the spiral of giving and receiving. So the 6 twos would be that would make a lot of sense if it's so.
And so the Masonic Traveler says that he's curious about what the stone is, but thanks for the explanation. Well, this is the problem that we have with fundamentalism in the world, and it relates to the comment that Richard about the Bible, fundamentalists and a lot of people of faith, even Muslims, especially Muslims, think that the Quran or the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita should be taken literally, and none of them are about something that's literal. And and if you get talking about the literal, then you're just not there at all.
Well, and I wouldn't say especially Muslim. I think especially fundamentalists across the board.
Especially fundamentalists. Yeah,
because
I'm sorry, I don't mean to say anything negative about Islam, because I have lived in 12 Muslim countries, some of them for longer than others. I've spent about 6 months in Saudi Arabia, and I have known these countries as very peaceful countries and with lots of good morals and so on. And they raise good people.
The problem with fundamentalism primarily is that they have typically piss poor fundamentals.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're now off on a real tangent.
Yeah.
So the Masonic Traveler says you guys should break down The Red Lion by Mary Shepis in a psychological aspect. Sorry, this is the Carl Jung depth psychology reading group. Okay, and I leave it to others to do the work that needs to be done for others or with other philosophies. All I'm saying is this is Carl Jung's perspective. I have grokked it, and I am doing my best to convey it down the generations. And so is Jordan. And I don't even know what Jordan's philosophy is per se, except that he's been helping me with this understanding of Jung, which I appreciate very much. And so I would say that each of us has to go find his own philosopher's stone, his or her own philosopher's stone. And all I can say is don't be looking for a rock, okay? Because even the term philosopher's stone is a symbol of something else. Okay, it's a symbol of what they were looking for in alchemy. They thought that they were trying to find something physical because that's the way they were coming up through the last 2,000 years. But it's not physical, okay, and it never will be. And so some have said that the alchemists were looking to convert lead into gold. Well, the only gold that they were converting to was philosophical gold, or the gold of a psychological perspective that can give you immortality and help you live your life. That's all it was. Okay. And, whether, 99% of them thought they were looking for something that was physical or not isn't the relevant issue. Okay. We have actually, I think, some physicists in Great Britain did convert something, I'm not sure it was lead, into gold at very, very great expense, way more expense than the value of the gold produced. Right. And so yes, gold can be created because it has been created in the universe, and let us suppose that we have physicists somewhere in the UK who've worked out how you can turn something from one thing into gold. I acknowledge that. And then what have you got? Okay, what have you proven by that? Where you've spent, 85 gazillion dollars to prove that you could produce an ounce of gold.
Well, one thing I've never heard anyone else say, so maybe it's original. Maybe someone else has said this, but my understanding of lead is that it's completely decayed uranium, and that's why it's toxic. But so the lead would be the tail of the serpent, and the gold would be the renewed life in the head of the serpent. So when the snake bites his tail, I think the lead and the gold are also that sapentiae, the physical personification of the circular continuous wisdom.
Okay. So when we get to Richard saying, "Give up the searching, accept that Jesus is God," is my advice to everyone here. Pray the rosary with the Catholic mysteries, and God will move in your heart, and then let your intuition take over. Well, when we get to that, it's time to move on, Jordan. So I'm going to read.
Yep, proselytizing,
right,
witnessing.
So where is truth and faith? Where is warm trust? You find all this between men, but not between men and serpents, even if they are serpent souls. But wherever there is love, the serpent-like abides also. Christ himself compared himself to a serpent. And I think I read that already, that footnote. And his hellish brother, the Antichrist, is the old dragon himself. What is beyond the human that appears in love has the nature of the serpent and the bird. And the serpent often enchants the bird, and more rarely the bird bears off the serpent. Man stands in between. What seems like a bird to you is a serpent to the other, and what seems like a serpent to you is a bird to the other. Therefore, you will meet the other only in human form. If you want to become, then a battle between bird and serpent breaks out. And if you only want to be, you will be a man to yourself and to others. He who is becoming belongs to the desert or in a prison, for he is beyond human. If men want to become, they behave like animals. No one saves us from the evil of becoming unless we choose to go through hell. Jordan.
Yeah, I think no one saves us until we do it all.
Yeah.
The tree cannot grow to heaven unless its roots reach to hell. So, I mean, the thing is, it's about don't float around and, all nice, everything positive, spirit, conscious light. That's imbalanced. You need the depth and the dark to root you and to nourish you from the earth.
Right. And, you can see anybody who wants to become, like our former president, who wants to become a president again, he behaves like an animal, and he's a very selfish one at that, and it's very easy to see. I mean, all you have to do is open your eyes and listen to 10 minutes on any cable news channel right now, and you can see exactly what Jung was talking about here. So the Masonic Traveler says at the end, "I appreciate the explanation. I'll do some self-reflection to let go of suffering and find this inner stone." Absolutely, that's what you need. Absolutely.
something that's a great comment, because I love the quote that pain is typically required, but suffering is a choice. So what happens, you take your pain and you continue, and you live it and live with it, and you're continually healing. But at the same time, not worried about being healed. It's living the healing. So the suffering to me it's kind of like worry. It's a waste of imagination. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. Whereas, oh, I'm in pain. Okay, well, do something about it, or live with it. So that's a great point, to lose the suffering. I find that's unnecessary. I think it's taught from a shaming behavior perspective as some form of diet reflection, that if I'm suffering, I'm suffering, look at me, look at me. It's kind of playing the bird with the broken wing. As soon as you get up to it, it flies away.
Yeah. So what I do want to make a comment about Freemasons, because I do have some indirect experience with a 33 third degree Mason. Although I don't claim to know anything about Freemasonry, truly. I do know that Masons did pass a lot of culture through Western Europe, especially because they were allowed to travel, and some people weren't allowed to travel over history. And so Masons became people with knowledge who did things. And some of our greatest Americans were Freemasons, including George Washington and many of the founding fathers. But what I would say is that my grandfather, who was a 33 third degree Mason, was the most bigoted man I ever knew. Okay, absolutely the most bigoted man I ever knew. And I can respect him in retrospect for certain things. I've been rehabilitating him in this is my maternal grandfather. I've been rehabilitating him in my own psyche for about a decade now. But as I understand the way the Masons work at a lot of secret organizations, is that they have these secrets that you have to do X and then you get a secret, and so apparently there are 33 secrets. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, there's you get read into the secret, and then you can call yourself a blump degree Mason, and so if you're a Mason, it's like me wearing a uniform. I was wearing my Marine Corps uniform on Friday because it was the birthday of the Marine Corps, and reminded that we wear our resume on our chest, right, on our chest and on our shoulders and on our sleeves. And so Masons do it secretly, secret handshakes and whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is that they're only stepping stones. I mean, Jung called secret societies sort of a crutch for people who couldn't get there on their own, basically, I guess. And he talks about this on page 245 of Memories, Dreams, Reflections. So if you're a Freemason listening to this and you're really upset about what I'm saying, it's page 345, I believe. It's 245 or 345, as I recall.
Probably 245, because I don't think Memories, Dreams, Reflections is that long.
Okay. Well, wherever it is, look up what Jung had to say in Memories, Dreams, Reflections about secret societies, and you will see that he considered it an interim phase, a stage that people go through, and it's kind of a crutch. But then you get to the 33 third degree masonry, and you say, is that all there is?
Well, and there's a certain, enclaves of exclusion that go along there. So
right.
Since there's a hermit in plain sight group.
So it's an organization, and organizations have done wonderful things. You can come to Alexandria, Virginia, and see the wonderful tower that the Freemasons built there, that was part of George Washington and the founding fathers were involved in that at that time, and you can see pictures of George Washington and others laying the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol, and they're wearing their Freemason aprons. And that's wonderful that they held things together. And so Washington, D.C. is in many ways laid out by Freemasons, in many ways. I mean, you can read all about that somewhere. I don't care to be a conveyor of that information. You could read some of not Clancy's novels, but Angels and Demons and that sort of thing.
You can get a sense of it too, architecturally, from an urban design perspective. I think it was Edmund Bacon's The Design of Cities, that he has cities around the world and how they're composed.
Yeah. So anyway, having said all that, we're about what Jung thought. We don't claim to have the answers. I don't claim to have the answers, and I'm still working on them in many ways of my life. And very honestly, I don't know if I would have liked Carl Jung if I actually knew him, for a variety of reasons. But what he did do is he expanded my perspective on the world, and I think many people's perspective on the world in many ways, and that helps me with my mental health. Okay. John Beebe once commented, John Beebe is a famous Jungian analyst, he said that Carl Jung was my shrink. Well, yes, that he was and continues to be. And so, but the Philosopher's Stone we all have to find for ourselves. And so Sri has made a reference to the liberty, and I just want to read this because I happen to have a connection with that. Sri says, there were craftsmen building churches that took 100 years and geometry. My brothers were masons. One left who was high. He was the one on the U.S.S. Liberty naval ship AGTR 5, 1967, Six-Day War. Okay, well, Sherry, that's interesting. I have a high school classmate who was involved in the intelligence communications with Liberty at the time that she was attacked by Israeli warplanes during the 1967 war. And the whole story of the Liberty was hushed up terribly by the Navy, presumably because the United States wanted to stay friends with Israel. But the reality is that an Israeli aircraft attacked the Liberty at sea during the Six-Day War. Liberty was showing her colors, so she had her American flag out on deck, and they killed 32 sailors. The the Liberty didn't sink, but it had to limp into Malta. And it was a hugely traumatic experience for the people that were aboard Liberty. And I happen to know a woman who was engaged to a man who was on Liberty. And it's just a terribly shameful chapter in our history because we hid it from the public, essentially. Okay, I mean, there were some news reports about it in the 3 or 4 days after it happened, but then it was completely hushed up, and people just aren't allowed to talk about it much. So I talk about it when it comes to my attention, because I do know something about it. And I don't know what the correct answer is, but anyway, I'm going to continue on here. We only have about 6 minutes, so I think what we'll do is we'll stop here. I think we've gotten a little bit far afield, perhaps, for most people's taste anyway by this time. Do you want to comment on the Liberty or anything else, Jordan?
No, I don't.
Okay. But I mean, if you are curious about the incident of the Liberty, please look it up. There are Google sites about Liberty, and please look it up and get to know what actually happened. Then it's not widely known, and it's like the fire on the U.S.S. Forrestal. That too was seriously hushed up, and I think it's fair to say that in retrospect, John McCain was redeemed by his behavior as a prisoner of war and as a U.S. senator, but he was a young hot dog on the Forrestal, and there's some of us who believe that his behavior on Forrestal almost sank the ship, and so you could look that up too. There are very ugly experiences in the Navy, and I've been around the Navy for my entire life. I've carried an ID card since I was 10 years old. I still carry one today, as a Marine Corps officer, which is part of the naval service. And the community of people that have been involved with the Navy knows lots of things that not everybody is aware of. That's all I could say about that. I should say, yesterday, I was parking cars in my school parking lot. So they're encouraging people to turn into my school parking lot so they could park for the Navy football game against Alabama, which Navy fortunately won because Navy hasn't had a really great season. However, in football in the Navy, the only game that counts is the Army-Navy game. So, and that'll be really true this year because Navy or Air Force creamed Navy, Army creamed Air Force. And so now if Navy can redeem itself, it will have to beat Army in the Army-Navy game for this year, such as it is. But fortunately, my car parking days are over until next year now. So, Jordan, anything else?
I don't think so. I think this has been an excellent session about, honestly, the Sapientiae, Jung personifying the wisdom to drum up the soul and speak to her. And Also, you see the humanity of on the edge of egomaniacal, and at the same time pushing the point of the envelope that what he was working with was an important thing to express. So I guess back to, what's my philosophy? You said you didn't know, and I laugh. In college, it would probably been something like solipsistic transcendentalism. Only the self exists, but there's more. And now, no labels. I'd rather live it and not cordon it off into some corral.
That was then, this is now. So Richard says, until recently, no, but then Skip said Jung built a house with stones. So now I'm guessing he had some control over the elemental spirits that come along with alchemy. And I would say that's absolutely correct. And this is the house behind me that he built. I wouldn't call him a great architectural designer or, any kind of designer of a home, because look how close he built it to the edge of the lake. Oh my God. But I guess that lake doesn't change its height much.
Well, and I think too, rather than architectural pretty or expertise, he basically built himself.
Yeah, I mean, and
so it doesn't have to be pretty. It's beautiful simply because it's him. And it's like when someone makes something, rather than being pretty, beauty isn't necessarily pretty, and it's real. And when it's real, then there's the beautiful, and that's workable and usable.
And so, just as I was showing earlier in this session, my thing, which is, I'll show it once more. Okay, this is my doodle, and I don't care whether anybody else likes it. I'm not an artist, and I'm not trying to sell it or sell anything that I do. In fact, I have a portfolio which I carry with me when I go to Confluence, and I simply offer, if you like something in my portfolio, please take it. I don't sell it. But the point is that is my way of getting in contact with my unconscious. Bollingen was Jung's way of getting in touch with his unconscious. And so in the same sense that Bollingen is a symbol of Jung's self, the doodle is a symbol of myself. That's all it is. And it's not, I'm not proselytizing anything by it. I find it very soothing and useful as a method to communicate with my unconscious. That's all. For me, it's my way, not Jung's way, not anybody else's way. But that's why I do it. So anyway, so I'm gonna pass on talking about anything else today. We've got a long day, and let's enjoy it. I spent most of yesterday parking cars, so I want a little time off today.
Nice.
We'll see you all next week.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Jordan, for helping. Bye. And Jordan, bring along the water bear next week so you can show it off.
Certainly.
Presumably you will have it by then.
Yep.
So peace. Take care.